Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Grand Traverse. We're glad to have you with us, whether here in person or streaming from home. I'm Susan Smith, co-coordinator of this lay-led service today, along with Dan Tholen. Both of us are members of the Sunday Services Committee. Dan also serves as president of the board. Mike Radke and Kelly McIntosh are collaborators and participants in this service today, as well as the many talented musicians. We're grateful to all. At the beginning of the order of service, you will notice our land acknowledgement, a request to silence electronic devices, and a notice about the book at the front of our sanctuary in which you can record your joys and concerns and or light a candle of commemoration as you prefer. Please feel free to do so as we are getting started. Connie Metcalf from the Congregational Care Team will read what you choose to share a little later in this service. Here at the UUCGT, we are a welcoming congregation, which means that we believe each individual with their unique background, experiences, identities, and beliefs is a gift to our community. It means that we recognize and appreciate that in the act of your joining us and being authentically present in all of your diversity, you have demonstrated your trust in us. An awesome entrustment, a trust that we individually and collectively must be mindful to deserve. That is our promise to you as a welcoming congregation. If you're new to our congregation or haven't been here for a while and are willing and able, you may stand to introduce yourself. Someone will bring you a microphone, which will allow even those streaming from home to hear your introduction. However, please feel free to remain seated and silent if you prefer. Is there anyone who would like to introduce themselves today? Or introduce someone else who's a guest with them?
Quiet group today.
And that's okay. Now, before we go on, I want to explain a couple additions to the order of service. First of all, in our centering music, we have Judy Weaver and her granddaughter, Amelia Burke, both in place with their violins, as well as Barbara Young at piano. And the theme from Schindler's List is the music they will be playing today, composed by John Williams. And then a major omission in the service is immediately following Kelly McIntosh's reflection will be a musical reflection by Nan Worthington and Barbara Young on piano. To This We've Come, composed by John Carlo Menotti. And I think that's the only changes to the order of service. Now you might ask, why is the UUG having a service entitled On Tyranny, the name of this book? Yale University Professor Timothy Snyder's best-selling book. Let me explain. This service is not only stimulated by that book and the new reality of our country, but also, and most importantly, UU values and our long-standing tradition of standing up for the least among us and essentially doing good in the world. So, from our concerns about our election results, Reverend Alex's wicked service, our commitment to our UU values, and our reading of Timothy Snyder's book, we came to this Sunday service on tyranny. Let us now turn to our centering music, the theme from Schindler's List, composed by John Williams and performed by Judy Weaver and her granddaughter Amelia Burke and Barbara Young.
Good morning. Whoever you are, wherever you are on life's journey, wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you are welcome here this morning at our last service of 2024. We invite you today to consider the topic of tyranny, to recognize the threats to democracy as they arise, and our role as a spiritual community to raise alerts, to resist peacefully but relentlessly, and to provide support for members of our community that are most at risk. In this region, where 80% of the citizens who identify as evangelical Christians voted for a person who embodies blasphemy, I'm pleased that the Social Justice Action Team and Reverend Alex are already working with the 20% of Christians who did not. I want to take this moment to remind you of this small handout that we have entitled, I don't have it with me, it's a small handout entitled, What UUs Believe, written by David Rankin, which, when you read it, you will see that everything listed is in direct opposition to what's warned about in On Tyranny. I'll read just 3 of them, but I encourage you to pick up a copy out there to read them all. We believe in the ethical application of religion. Good works are the natural product of good faith, the evidence of an inner grace that finds completion in social and community involvement. We believe in the necessity of the democratic process. Records are open to scrutiny, elections are open to members, and ideas are open to criticism, so that people might govern themselves. We believe in the motive power of love. The governing principle in human relationships is the principle of love, which always seeks the welfare of others and never seeks to hurt or destroy. The topic of today's service is not comfortable, but it's unavoidable. So come, let us worship together this morning. Okay, we join other UU congregations in the world by lighting a chalice to mark the sacredness of the time we are about to share. Today we will mark this by reading our mission statement, which is printed on your order of service. We'll read it together here. Grounded in love, we protect the web of life by building beloved community, making good trouble, and embodying radical love, engaging in lifelong learning. And we sound the singing bowl to focus our attention in the moment. And now our opening hymn, number 170 in the gray hymnal, We Are a Gentle, Angry People.
Verse 5. Hi, my name is Kelly McIntosh. I'm going to share with you how I'm preparing for dealing with the possibility of our country living under tyranny. And I will tell you now, I have a really low voice, so if you can't hear me, raise your hand or go like this, and I will try to get this closer to me. I didn't get involved in politics until after the 2016 election. However, I have been aware of world politics since I was a child. I remember my mother talking with a neighbor about how she was worried that our country would soon be under communist rule. I had no idea what that meant, but I could tell that she was upset. I read the book, The Diary of Anne Frank, and a few years later, I saw the movie. The reality of that story has remained as a dark cloud over my psyche. And then after having my first child, I watched the movie Sophie's Choice, a story inspired by true life events in the lives of Holocaust survivors. That haunted me for months. I would look at my tiny son and burst into tears, fearful that someday he might be taken away. Because of the effect on these things in my earlier life, I have frequently realized that I, and white people my age who were born and raised in America, have been very fortunate through our lives. We haven't come out of bomb shelters to see our homes destroyed. We haven't wondered what happened to a loved one that didn't return home. We haven't had to listen to our starving children cry. And we haven't had to wonder who in our town could be trusted. We now face a time in our country when we have no idea what the next 2 years will bring. There is a real possibility that we will soon be living under tyranny. The democratic process that has allowed us to trust in the stability of our government has been gradually chipped away by certain political forces. I often think of the question, had you lived in Europe at the time Hitler was taking over, what would you have done? And then a very thought-provoking follow-up to this is, you're doing it now. Would you have been someone who thought, well, I'm not Jewish, so this isn't going to affect me? Or would you have been someone comfortable to live in their little bubble, happy to remain ignorant of surrounding events? Or would you have been the one risking your life to sneak Jewish children out of a country? Thankfully, most of us have never had to ask these questions. However, we may be called upon to deal with such scenarios soon. How will we prepare for such times? And before we all sink into a pit of depression, let's look around for where we can gather strength. My involvement with National Indivisible, a group that has spent years fighting to protect democracy for all, has bolstered me. Before the election, thousands of people were in place, ready to face a battle to protect the election results. Lawyers, activists, and law enforcement officers were all set up to jump into action. The situation has certainly changed, but these anxious workers have remained in place, waiting to define the new challenges and to act. 2 days after the election, National Indivisible had a Zoom meeting for all the Indivisible leaders. There were 1,100 leaders from around the country on that call. The directions were for us to recognize our feelings, cry if we needed to, take time to recover, but also to know there was hope. The following night, there was another Zoom call with Indivisible, Move On, Common Good, 2 national union groups, and even a couple of Democratic legislators from Washington, D.C. There were 140,000 people on that call. Each one of the speakers laid out their plans for a resistance. We don't have to fret that we're fighting tyranny by ourselves. There is strength in numbers, and we have the numbers. And don't think you have to become a member of Indivisible to become active. UU has a social justice team that is already making plans to get into good trouble. Just remember these things. They can't take something away from you if you don't let them. We can say no. We live in a democracy, and we should continue to live like we do. We shouldn't change what we expect of our leaders. And as Timothy Snyder says in his book On Tyranny, don't obey in advance. We shouldn't change our behaviors because we fear repercussions. We should expect elections to continue and work to ensure that they do. We should point out the failures of this new administration. We should trust our judgment and remain true to ourselves. And lastly, as Timothy Snyder reminds us, be as courageous as we can, for if none of us is prepared to die for freedom, then all of us will die under tyranny. So just what would you be willing to do to protect our democracy? I figure I'm an old woman. I've lived a full life. My kids are grown. They don't need me anymore. As long as I can get somebody to take care of my dog if something happens to me, my fight will go on. If I go down, I'll go down fighting, rather than hiding somewhere, waiting for those siding with the tyrants to take me down. There are many places from which we can draw strength. We have our 3 very efficient ladies in Lansing who have been fighting to protect our rights. There have been many significant changes made over the last few years to improve our county board of commission, and our city is known for its liberal attitudes. We may not have a majority in Lansing or Washington, but almost as many people voted for democracy as voted for tyranny. We have many leaders that will need us to pressure them and then support them. Many liberal leaders are looking forward to the midterms and are already working to turn things around. I have no idea what will happen over the next couple of years. All I know is that I'm getting ready to help any of my neighbors who are threatened, to work with other like-minded people to protect our democracy, and to get into as much good trouble as I can. And now I would like to invite you to listen to the song To This We've Come, written by Giancarlo Menotti, sung by Nan Worthington, and played by Barbara Young.
To this we've come, that men withhold the world from men, no ship, no shore, for him who drowns at sea, no home nor grave, for him who dies on land. To this we've come, that men be born a stranger upon God's earth, that he be chosen without a chance for choice, that he be hunted without the hope of refuge. To this we've come. those doors to whom the heart can still be explained? Is there anyone who still may care? Tell me, Secretary, tell me, have you ever seen the council? Does he speak? Does he breathe? Have you ever spoken to him? Papers, 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 but don't you understand? What can I tell you to make you understand? My child is dead. John's mother is dying. My own life is in danger. I ask you for help, and all you give me is papers. What is your name? Montesorel, age 33, color of eyes, color of hair, single or married, repeated and race, place of birth, father's name, mother's name, papers, 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 papers. Look at my eyes. They are afraid to sleep. Look at my hands, at these old woman's hands. Why don't you say something? Aren't you secretaries human beings like us? What is your name, Montesorel, age 33? What will your papers do? They cannot stop the clock. They are too thin an armor against a bullet. What is your name, Montesorel, age 33? What does that matter? All that matters is that the time is late, that I'm afraid and I need your help. What is your name? What is your name? What is your name? This is my answer. My name is woman. Age still young. Color of hair gray. Color of eyes the color of tears. Occupation waiting, 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 waiting. That I will come on,
We've come to the time in our service where we reach into our pockets and give freely, giving to sustain our congregation, our building, our staff, and our programming. In addition to sustaining this congregation, our stewardship allows us to reach out to those who are the most marginalized and vulnerable among us. Our offerings truly reflect our commitment to our UU shared values. Please note the two sides of the baskets being passed. They are labeled congregation and community needs. Place your donations as you wish. If you are watching at home, you may give as described in the slide or prearrange with your bank for a monthly transfer into the UUCGT account. You may always designate your gift as you choose for the congregation or for community needs. Let us enjoy now our meditation music, The Dark Island, performed by Angus MacDonald while the offering is being collected.
Good morning, friends. I'm Connie Metcalf, a member of the Congregational Care Team, and I'd just like to acknowledge Angus and also Linda Fletcher have recently joined the Congregational Care Team, so we're really excited to have you guys. So with sharing the joys and concerns, this is a practice as a religious community to set aside time in our service to name and honor the joys and concerns that mark our lives, the milestones and moments of our lived experience. I will be sharing the joys and concerns that have been offered up to us today to hold on our hearts. If you have a joy or concern that's a bit too heavy to share, I invite you to reach out to Rev Alex or to any member of the Congregational Care Team. If your joy or concern is still raw and tender, we invite you to hold it on your heart as you are held in this loving community. None of us is meant to travel life's journey alone. And now, here is what has been shared with this gathered community. This is a short list today. For the innocent people living in Gaza, Lebanon, and Israel who suffer daily as war rages on, from Rick Van. And then I'd also like to add, my sister's husband, Fred, is struggling with a multitude of mental disorders in memory care, and Lewy bodies, Alzheimer's, and his heart is strong, he's physically strong, and we're just kind of navigating that territory with him. And so sending any prayers or love would be wonderful. And now let's hold a moment of silence for the concerns and joys that remain in silence and on our hearts. And now please stay seated as we sing the song of response, Spirit of Life. It's number 123 in the Gray Hymnal. Words and music by Carolyn McDade and Barbara Young, again on piano. Thank you.
Many times, how can there be a truth in advertising law that can be used to prosecute companies for false claims about their products, and yet the person advertising for the most powerful office in the land lies 78% of the time? Those statements weren't opinions that anyone could legitimately hold. They were supposed to be facts. But they weren't. 78% of them were lies, or at best, the results of someone getting his facts wrong. How is that possible? How can a person running for our top executive office tell over 78% lies to get elected, and that be considered legitimate? How does that work? I couldn't believe my eyes and ears at 2 a.m. on election night. I wondered what more and what else I personally could have done. I read Tim Snyder's book, On Tyranny, with renewed interest and concern. By the way, my husband bought 3 copies this morning and brought over here, so they're going to be in the library for you folks. And I read that book with renewed interest and concern and reflected on Reverend Alex's service on November 3rd, Wicked, in which he shared with us Yale University Professor Jason Stanley's 10 Elements of Fascism and drew parallels between those elements and what is happening in our country today. Reverend Alex described the othering in our country of immigrants and refugees, religious minorities, trans and queer folks, all described by one candidate in disparaging terms such as lawless criminals and moral degenerates. In similar use of untruths, a different candidate claimed Haitian immigrants in Springfield, Ohio, were abducting and eating people's pets, conjuring false and abhorrent images of hardworking and honest people pursuing the American dream. Reverend Alex also noted the rewriting of this country, of history in this country, by those who deny that the Holocaust even occurred, and those who said that Jan 6 rioters were friendly visitors during the Capitol, and also that chattel slavery either did not occur or that slavery was an opportunity given by white plantation owners to black people so that they could learn a skill. We also heard self-aggrandizement statements of, "I alone can fix it," and "you have been badly treated and I am your retribution." Maya Angelou famously said, "When someone shows you who they are, believe them. When someone says he is going to lock up the entire J6 committee, believe him." When the Heritage Foundation publication, Project 2025, talks about the dissolution of our governmental structures and functions, believe it. All of this and more gives us cause for concern. We must hold our officials to the same standard as all other people in our country. They must obey the laws. An individual who is a felon convicted by a jury of his peers should not be eligible for high office in our land. Cabinet members should not flagrantly break the law or be bedfellows with our country's enemies. And someone who served as architect of a plan to separate young children, even babies, from their parents should never be appointed to serve in government again, and especially not as deputy chief of policy. Carefully listen to our elected leader's words and watch his behavior. You do not have to be paranoid, but you must be alert. Specifically, don't excuse the behavior or words by aphorisms such as, "He's only kidding," or "That's just how he talks." This is our democracy, and it can be destroyed as many 20th century democracies have been. Even India, previously considered the largest democracy in the world, along with many others, have been taken over by autocrats or autocratic-leaning rulers. On December 3rd, South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol attempted to take over his country by imposing martial law. This provoked a massive response from citizenry, lawmakers, police, and prosecutors to thwart his declaration of a military state. Timothy Snyder's 16th lesson from the 20th century says, "Learn from peers in other countries." And South Korea has given us an immediate opportunity to do so. Snyder also warns, you may not know when you are voting in your last election that it is your last election. Safeguard our democracy. Stand up, stand out, be heard, protest, take action that gives voice to your objections to abhorrent words and behaviors. Reach out and make small talk and eye contact with strangers. Form allegiances, yet protect your privacy. Contribute to good causes. Defend institutions and investigative journalism. Make a difference in every way you can. Remember our UU values. The current formulation adopted at the 2024 UUA General Assembly. I highlight 3 of the 6 shown in that diagram on the screen. First, in living our value of interdependence, we promise, as UUers, to protect Earth and all beings from exploitation. Second, in living our value of justice, we promise to work against racism and all forms of systemic oppression. Third, in living our value of equity, we vow to recognize the inherent worth of all, to flourish with dignity, love, and compassion. There is no room for words like vermin or scum of the earth, or for tyrants or for lies in our UU values. Take heart, dear friends. UUCGT is on the right side of history. Go forth and make good trouble.
Good morning. My name is Mike Radke. I'm a member of the congregation and also co-chair with Mary Van Valen of the Social Justice Committee. And with those kind of passionate words we've just heard, we have a lot of work to do ahead of us here this coming year. Let's start this morning by listening to the words of Unitarian Universalist Reverend David Breeden. He says, "Let's consider the process of democracy a spiritual practice. Those who love order and tranquility don't tend to be fans of democracy. After all, democracy in its very essence is loud and messy. Taking the time to listen to every voice in the room can be tedious, tiresome, and boring, like reading a thesaurus too long. This holds true for any human group, a book reading group, or the United Nations. Yet in our dangerous times, democracy needs friends badly. Freethinkers, humanists, and other liberals must rise to the occasion. We are the torchbearers who trust the process of democracy, fully aware of its inherent challenges and costs. The 5th principle of Unitarian Universalism puts it this way: we affirm and promote the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. It is imperative that we practice this principle. Democracy isn't just a system, it's an ideal that each of us either has faith in or doesn't. Viewing the democratic process as a spiritual journey not only elevates its significance for each of us, but also for the communities we create together. Practice the process. Practice democracy. Our mission is to trust in the democratic process, showing that it is the right way, it is the way to liberation that we strive for. A foundational tenet of democracy is inclusivity of all voices. Both liberal religion and secular thought have too many times fallen short in this respect. We must amplify more voices, all voices, because democracy thrives when diverse perspectives collide, like the rough edges of stones until they become smooth. True liberation is born when we prioritize getting the process right, ensuring every voice is heard. Let's practice democracy. Let's study it, practice it, make it the foundation of all we do. Reverend Breeden's words are especially important for us today. Let's practice democracy. Let's study it, practice it, make it the foundation of all we do. I'd like to give you a few of my own reflections on tyranny. This was a difficult topic for us each personally as we began planning for this sermon today. Our first encounter with tyranny usually happens as a child. It becomes visceral, a tangible feeling of fear, anxiety, and outrage at injustice. In our youth, we call that bullying. As a young child, I remember comparing myself to my neighborhood kids who were 2 or 3 grades older, taller, and stronger. My experiences being bullied were scary, frustrating, and they made me angry. My strident protests, arguments, and pleas for mercy had no impact. Being physically restrained, taunted, and teased drove me to resolve never to let that happen again. I did learn strategies to cope with tyranny of the bully. First, you have to have your radar up, be able to detect a threat, plan an escape or a response, find words to distract, counter the bully, avoid a conflict or delay until protection is secured. Expose the bully or the tyrant in a loud public way. Seek the safety of an adult authority who could hold the bully accountable. What strategies work for you in childhood? I honed these strategies into successful defeats of the bully. Today, we use mature variations of these strategies to overcome the tyrant. Recall, tyranny is a form of government where a single person or party has all the power to set the rules and enforce them, however arbitrarily. Citizens are controlled, their opinions are ignored or discounted. A tyrant is a self-serving bully ruler who has no legal or cultural limits on their power. The tyrant bully exercises this power harshly over the people they are supposed to serve and protect. And there is no adult figure of authority to limit them. On the other hand, democracy is defined by the principle of rule by the people, where government officials are elected through free and fair elections. Laws and policies are determined by a majority vote. There are checks and balances on every element in a democracy. Democracies guarantee the press is free to expose corruption. Every citizen, even the vulnerable, have a voice, and it can be heard if those in power are forced to listen. Who are the victims of tyranny? The vulnerable are at most risk of falling prey to tyrannical oppression, largely because they start with little or no control over their own destiny and have few strategies or resources to demand justice. They may find themselves being dismissed, scapegoated, or even being silenced by threats of retribution. Who are the silent ones today in our own congregation, our community, or our country? Our immigrant neighbors, for sure. The gay or trans community, people of different races or cultures, women, even children. The vulnerable depend on those of us who have privilege, who know the rules of democracy and the systems for achieving human rights. We are the adult figures of authority, holding tyranny and bullies accountable. The UUCGT Social Justice Action Team will soon be proposing a democracy agenda for 2025 to focus our efforts in this community. 3 goals are being considered. First, serve the vulnerable populations by listening to them, listening to their needs and their concerns, then taking action to support them. Second, promote a clean, safe environment, a green sanctuary, and oppose the degradation of climate. And third, defend democracy and democratic systems. Stridently utilize all legitimate strategies to promote the principles of democracy. Let's move from the thoughts and fears of the bully and of tyranny to the barnyard, of all places, where we may find some insights today. Remember the story of Chicken Little? The little chicken, sometimes called Henny Penny, who was awakened by a rose petal that fell on her head while she slept. In fear for her world, she ran around to all the other barnyard animals, shouting, "The sky is falling! The sky is falling!" until everyone was in a panic. Remember reading this story to your grandchildren? Some fear our sky is falling and we may lose our democracy. However, we have just experienced democracy in all its messiness. Some of our preferred candidates lost at the local, state, and national levels. Remember, this happens to one party or the other every 4 years. Over our 250 plus years of history, we have experienced the circuitous route of progress and retrenchment through polarization, a civil war, several world, regional, and cultural wars, epidemics, and economic depressions. Americans have overcome many obstacles, and our democracy has survived. The sky is not falling. In 2024, the majority of voters elected the incoming officials, some of whom we like, others not so much. We are headed to a peaceful, if not rocky, transition of power. There are many democratic systems in place, with laws and people dedicated to enforcing them. We still have a free press. Public protest is one of our most powerful elements of democracy. And we still have our own voices if we choose to use them. It may be messy, but democracy has not been lost yet. We have agency. We can use some of the successful and familiar strategies of our youth and the lessons of others who have overcome tyranny to defend the vulnerable and to defend democracy. Here's a reminder of the list. Have our radar up. Be vigilant to detect a threat and create a plan in response. Find and speak words to counter the threats, resolve a conflict, or delay until an appropriate solution is found. Expose injustices in a loud and public voice. Appeal to an authority and like-minded partners who will help hold the tyrant accountable. We can defend and promote democracy, and we must. Working together in a focused effort as a congregation, we are more powerful than we are as individuals. I leave you to consider your New Year's resolutions. What role will you play in support of vulnerable populations, of our environment, and of our democracy? What role will we play? Let's take a moment of silence to reflect. Please stand for our closing hymn, number 155, Circle Round for Freedom. Words and music by Linda Hirschhorn and the VE Choir, accompanied by Barbara Young on the piano.
I just saw this hymn this morning, and I learned that the melody is on the middle line. I thought that might be helpful for you to know.
We end our service now by releasing the flame from the chalice, but it will remain burning in our hearts to drive our efforts to raise our awareness of the creeping menace of tyranny. Give us resolve to actively resist where we can and to offer assistance to those who suffer.
We have a few announcements. You noticed perhaps that we have a few copies of Tim Snyder's short book, On Tyranny. It'll be present up here at the front of the sanctuary or later in the library. On Tyranny gives 20 practical things we can do. 3 of these copies are donated to the library, perhaps more, but don't forget to return them so we can keep them circulating. Please visit the UUCGT Social Justice website for things we can do in January to support our most vulnerable neighbors, protect our environment, and promote democracy. Please note that we join whenever possible the SALT Coalition. SALT stands for Spiritual Activists Leading Together, and they are good allies for the Social Justice Action Team. If you want to learn more about UUs, please mark your calendar. After service on January 26 between 12 and 1:30, we will have a UU orientation. You can sign up at the welcome table. Now, all invited are to stand and join hands or outstretch hands, our symbol of not wanting to be touched, if that's your preference. Now, in the spirit of life, radical love, and justice, go in peace, grow in love, and may we live into the world we so desperately need. May it be so.